Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by asking you a question, not about your job or your goals or your productivity. I want to ask you this. When's the last time you had a conversation where you didn't just talk about what's going on in your life, but how you're actually doing? Start conversations with how are you feeling, not what are you doing. Everywhere we go, from office elevators to Sunday brunches, the most common question we ask each other is, so what are you up to these days? It's become our default opener. And yet we rarely walk away from those conversations feeling any closer, any more connected, any more human. Because when you ask someone what they're doing, what you often get is an answer that sounds like a LinkedIn update. I'm working on a big pitch this week. I've been traveling a lot, just trying to keep up with everything. It's not that these answers are bad, they're just surface level. And we stay on the surface because it's safe, it keeps us moving, it keeps things functional, but it also keeps us distant. Every time we default to what are you doing instead of how are you feeling, we're choosing transaction over connection. And let me be clear, asking someone what they're doing isn't wrong, but it doesn't build anything. It doesn't create trust. It doesn't invite authenticity. It doesn't open the door to belonging. Now contrast that with what happens when you ask someone, how are you feeling today? Not how are you, because let's be honest, we've turned that one into a greeting, not a real question. I mean, actually leaning in and asking, how are you feeling today? What's been on your heart lately? Watch the body language shift. Watch the tone change. Watch someone take a breath and say, actually, it's been kind of a rough week. Or honestly, I feel stuck. Or even just, I don't know. That's where the real conversation starts. Not with doing, but with feeling. Because here's the truth, the way someone feels affects what they do. But we rarely take the time to understand the emotions driving the actions. We praise the hustle, the grind, the productivity, but beneath all of that is often anxiety, fear, overwhelm, insecurity. And until we talk about that, we're just treating the symptoms, never addressing the cause. Leaders who understand this principle create stronger teams. Friends who practice this create deeper relationships. Partners who prioritize this build unshakable trust. Why? Because they stop treating people like machines and start treating them like human. When you ask, what are you doing? You're speaking to someone's role. When you ask, how are you feeling? You're speaking to their soul. It's not about prying. It's not about therapy. It's about presence. It's about saying, I see you as more than your output. That kind of presence is rare. It's powerful, and it changes people. I remember a CEO telling me once, I don't know why my team doesn't trust me. I'm transparent with them. I tell them what we're working on all the time. And I said, maybe they don't need you to tell them what you're working on. Maybe they need to know what you're worried about. Maybe they need to know what you're feeling. Because trust doesn't come from knowing what someone does. It comes from knowing who someone is, and who we are is deeply shaped by what we feel. So start small, one person, one moment. Next time you sit down with a colleague or a friend or even a stranger, don't ask them what they've been doing. Ask them how they're really doing, and then listen. No fixing, no rushing, just space. You might be surprised by what they say, but more importantly, they might be surprised by what they're finally able to share. That's where connection begins. That's where trust is born. And that's what we're all really searching for. Want me to continue with step 2 or turn these into a full PDF talk resource? Absolutely. Here's the 600-word expansion of step 2 from the speech in Simon Sinek style. Focused, purposeful, human. As requested, this version includes only the main heading without subheadings or conclusion. Share the messy middle. We love stories. But we've been conditioned to love only a certain kind of story. The kind with a clean beginning, a clear arc, and a triumphant ending. We celebrate the breakthrough. We quote the success. We highlight the aftershot. But what we forget is that every single one of those stories had a middle. And not just a middle, but a messy middle. The part where things were unclear, where plans fell apart, where doubt crept in, where nothing looked like it was working. That's the part most people don't talk about. And that's the part most people need to hear, because the messy middle is where we live most of our lives. It's not glamorous, it's not Instagram worthy, but it's real. It's where resilience is built, it's where growth happens, it's where character is formed. And yet, when we communicate with others, we tend to skip over it. We either talk about where we started or where we've arrived, but we rarely share what it took to get through. We edit our stories before they're finished. We wait to speak until we've cleaned things up, until we've figured things out, until we have something impressive to report. But that delay, that silence, it creates disconnection, because while you're waiting to wrap your story in a bow, someone else is silently wondering if they're the only one struggling, and you could be the person who reminds them they're not. The messy middle is what makes your story matter, not because it's dramatic, but because it's human. When you let people in while you're still figuring things out, you give them permission to be in process too. It's easy to look at someone else's success and assume it was inevitable. But that's because we rarely see the late nights, the breakdowns, the lost confidence, the restarts. We don't see the journal entries that say, I don't think I'm cut out for this. We don't hear the internal dialogue that says, everyone else seems to be moving forward, why am I still here? When we hide those parts, we don't just hide our pain, we hide our humanity. And without humanity, there is no trust, there is no leadership, there is no connection. I'm not saying you should air every detail of your private life to every person you meet, but I am saying there is power in saying, I'm in the middle of it right now. I don't have the answers yet, but I'm still showing up. That level of honesty is what people crave, because it's rare, it's real, and it's the kind of courage that inspires, not after the fact, but during the process. Leaders who lead from the messy middle show their teams that failure isn't fatal, that struggle doesn't disqualify you, that vulnerability doesn't make you weak, it makes you worth following. The messy middle is not the part of the story we should skip. It's the part that makes the ending believable. Without it, the triumph feels shallow. With it, the triumph feels earned. And more than that, when you share the middle, you invite others to walk with you. You turn your journey from a solo climb into a shared experience. You stop performing and you start relating. That's where real influence lives. So don't wait until the story's perfect. Don't wait until you've won. Don't wait until the mess has been cleaned up and your speech is rehearsed. Speak from the middle, share the doubts, name the tension, let people see the process. Because when they do, they won't just admire your success, they'll feel a little more courage for their own. Would you like me to expand step 3 next, or help you turn this into a downloadable talk format? Certainly. Here's the 600-word expansion of step 3 from the speech written in the tone and style of SEMON SINEK. Thoughtful, story-driven, and human. As requested, it includes only the main heading, no subheadings or conclusion. Be interested, not interesting. We live in a world where everyone is trying to be seen. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants their voice, their story, their opinion to matter. And that's fair. Being seen and heard is a core human need. But somewhere along the way, we got the formula backwards. We began to believe that the way to be seen was to impress. The way to be heard was to speak louder. The way to be valued was to be more interesting. So we curate, we perform, we come up with clever things to say. We build identities around our careers, our talents, our followers. We speak before we listen because we're afraid if we don't talk, we'll be forgotten. But in all that effort to be interesting, we miss the most powerful tool we have to create real connection, being interested. There is something incredibly rare and disarming about someone who looks you in the eye and actually cares. Someone who doesn't just wait for their turn to speak, but who genuinely listens, not to fix you, not to compete, but to understand. That kind of presence changes people. We've all had that experience. Someone who sat with us when we didn't even know what we needed to say. Someone who asked the right question or just waited long enough in the silence for us to feel safe. That's what it means to be interested, and it's so rare because it requires us to set ourselves aside. It asks us to put down our ego, our agenda, and just be with someone without trying to shape their perception of us. Being interested is not passive. It's not just nodding politely while someone else speaks. It's an act of leadership. It's a deliberate choice to say, I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to understand you. And when you do that, you create space for something much bigger than small talk. You create space for honesty, for depth, for trust. The most magnetic people I know aren't the ones who dominate every room they walk into. They're the ones who know how to make you feel like you matter when you're with them. They ask questions, they notice, they remember, they lean in. And here's the irony. The more interested you are in others, the more interesting you become. Not because you're putting on a show, but because you're creating a kind of experience that people don't forget. People don't remember your resume, they remember how they felt around you. They remember if they felt heard, they remember if they felt seen. If your goal is to connect, whether it's with your team, your partner, your friends, your clients, the key is not more charisma, it's more curiosity. It's asking one more question. It's pausing just a second longer. It's saying, tell me more about that, even when you think you've heard enough. Because the truth is, most people are dying to be heard, but few people are willing to listen that deeply. We all want to matter, but the fastest way to matter is to make someone else feel like they do. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, resist the urge to perform. Don't try to win the moment. Don't try to impress. Instead, just care, ask, listen, be present, not to respond, not to fix, but to see the person in front of you. Because at the end of the day, we don't need more interesting people, we need more interested ones. The kind who change rooms not by taking up space, but by creating it. Would you like a full, formatted version of all 3 expanded sections compiled into a speech document or presentation? Absolutely. Here's a 600-word expansion of Step 4 from the motivational speech in Simon Sinek's thoughtful, purpose-driven tone. As with the others, it includes only the main heading and no subheadings or conclusion. Being known is one of the greatest human needs. If you strip away every layer of human behavior, our goals, our habits, our relationships, our fears, what you'll find underneath it all is a simple, powerful desire. We want to be known. Not for what we do, not for what we've accomplished, but for who we are. And not just the polished version of ourselves, the curated highlight reel we show the world, but the real, complicated, vulnerable version that most people never see. Being known is deeper than being seen. It's deeper than being heard. It means someone gets us. Someone understands what drives us, what scares us, what makes us feel alive. It means we're not invisible. It means we matter, even when we're not at our best. And yet, for something so essential, we often go through life feeling unknown. We're surrounded by people, but we feel like we're on an island. We share updates, but not feelings. We give facts, but not truth. We interact all the time, but rarely connect. Why? Because being known requires something terrifying. It requires honesty. Not the kind of honesty that comes with oversharing. Not dramatic confessions or emotional outbursts. I'm talking about the quiet honesty of being real. Saying, I'm tired, or I'm proud of what I did today, or I'm struggling and I don't know how to ask for help. These may seem like small things, but they're acts of profound courage because they invite others to see beyond the mask. But here's the catch. Being known is a two-way street. If you want to be known, you have to let yourself be known. That means dropping the performance. That means resisting the urge to only present the best parts of your story. It means showing up, even if you feel messy, especially if you feel messy. Most people are just waiting for permission. They're waiting for someone to go first. Someone to say, me too, or I've felt that way before, or even just tell me more. When you give someone that kind of permission, something remarkable happens. They open up, not because they were forced to, but because it finally felt safe. This is why leaders who create environments of psychological safety build the most loyal teams. This is why relationships thrive not just on love, but on vulnerability. This is why friendships deepen when we stop pretending and start telling the truth. Being known isn't about everyone knowing everything about you. It's about having people in your life who know the important things, the fears you carry, the dreams you haven't spoken out loud yet, the wounds you're still healing, the hopes that keep you going. You don't need to be known by the world. You need to be known by a few people who see you fully and love you anyway. Because here's the truth. If people only know the version of you that you've curated, you'll never feel truly loved. You'll only feel admired. and admiration is a lonely substitute for belonging. Admiration is about performance. Belonging is about presence. It's about being seen in your most unguarded moments and still being invited to the table. We spend so much time trying to impress people, but being known isn't about impressing. It's about being willing to be seen as we are, not as we wish we were. So as you move through your life, through your work, your relationships, your conversations, ask yourself, am I trying to be impressive or am I trying to be known? Because in the end, no amount of success will ever replace the power of feeling truly seen. Would you like all 4 expanded steps compiled into a cohesive document or styled for a keynote script? Absolutely. Here's a 600-word expansion of Step 5, written in the authentic, human-centered tone of Simon Sinek. As you requested, it contains only a main heading with no subheadings or conclusion. You're not a brand, you're a person. Somewhere along the way, we started talking about ourselves like we were startups. We began calling our lives brands and our personalities content. We started thinking in terms of image, reach, and impact. Metrics, once reserved for marketing departments, now define our everyday conversations. We're told to build a personal brand, to curate our presence, to always be on. But in the rush to become a brand, we forget something vital. We are not products. We are people. Brands are built for consistency. People are built for growth. Brands must be polished. People are supposed to be messy. Brands aim for perfection. People are meant to be evolving. And when we start to live like we're branding ourselves, we lose touch with the most powerful thing we have, our humanness. There's nothing wrong with having a voice, sharing your work, telling your story. But when your story becomes a performance, when every moment is filtered through the question, how will this look? You stop living and start managing perception. And that is exhausting. Human beings weren't made to be managed. We were made to be known. You don't have to have a slogan for your life. You don't need a mission statement for your personality. You don't have to be on brand all the time. In fact, it's often the off-brand moments, the awkward laugh, the silent struggle, the unpolished truth that connect us more deeply than any crafted post ever could. When you show up as a brand, people may admire you. But when you show up as a person, people trust you. They relate to you. They see themselves in you. And that's where connection lives, not in perfection, but in presence. Think about the people who've impacted your life the most. Were they the most impressive or were they the most real? The mentor who admitted their own failures. The friend who sat with you when you didn't have the words. The leader who said, I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. These are the moments that shape us. Not flashy, but honest. The irony is, when we try to build a brand, we often lose the very thing that would have made us magnetic in the first place, our vulnerability. People don't want perfect, they want permission. Permission to be human, permission to not have it all figured out, permission to feel. When you stop trying to be a brand, something amazing happens. You start to relax. You start to show up. You stop editing yourself in real time. You laugh louder. You ask better questions. You share before you have the perfect words. And that's when people lean in, not because you've sold them something, but because you've shown them something true. The pressure to be a brand will always tell you to explain yourself, to justify your story, to turn your experience into a pitch. But life isn't a pitch. Life is a practice in being authentic. A practice in being present, a practice in remembering that your worth is not found in your productivity, your aesthetic, or your ability to impress. Your worth is found in your humanity, in the way you show up when no one's watching, in the things you do that no one applauds, in the quiet strength it takes to say, I'm not a brand, I'm a person, and that's enough. Because in the end, people don't fall in love with brands, they fall in love with people. Let me know if you'd like a 6th step added, or would you like me to compile all 5 steps into a full-length keynote or downloadable speech draft?